Have you ever felt like the world was moving forward without you, as if everyone had someone to lean on except you? That strange silence that creeps into your life when you realize that no one is calling. No one is checking in, no one is really listening. Loneliness doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly, like water finding cracks in a wall, until one day you realize you're drowning in it. This is the story of Emily, a woman who thought she had been forgotten by the world, until the very last moment showed her something she never expected. Emily grew up in a small town in Ohio. She was the kind of child who blended into the background, never the loudest voice in the classroom. Never the center of attention, but always quietly present. She was kind, she was soft-spoken, and because of that, she was often overlooked. Her childhood was simple, filled with quiet evenings, sitting on the porch with her parents, watching the fireflies flicker in the summer air. But as the years passed, life began to scatter the people she loved most. Friends moved away, her parents grew older, and Emily, like so many of us, was left learning how to live in the quiet spaces of her own life. When she was 22, Emily moved to the city for work. At first, it was exciting. The streets buzzed with life, people hurried with purpose, and she thought maybe this was her chance to finally belong somewhere. But the city was not as warm as she had imagined. People kept their heads down. Neighbors rarely spoke. And soon, the silence that had once been comforting in her small hometown became unbearable in her tiny apartment, surrounded by walls that didn't care who she was. Emily tried to reach out. She joined clubs, she smiled at coworkers, she made small talk in the grocery line. But everyone seemed too busy, too preoccupied, too locked inside their own lives. And slowly, she began to retreat into herself. Nights became long. Weekends stretched endlessly. And even though she was surrounded by millions of people, she felt completely invisible. Years went by this way. Birthdays passed with no phone calls. Holidays arrived with no invitations. Emily became the person who others forgot to think about. She stopped expecting anything. She stopped hoping anyone would remember. And when you stop hoping, that's when the loneliness becomes heavy enough to crush you. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. One chilly November morning, Emily received a letter. Not an email, not a text, on actual letter with handwriting that leaned slightly to the left, smudged in places as though the writer's hand had trembled. It was from a woman named Sarah, someone Emily hadn't spoken to in nearly 15 years. Sarah had been her childhood best friend, the girl she had once shared secrets and laughter with on long summer nights, the girl she thought had forgotten her completely. The letter was short. "I don't know if you'll even read this," Sarah wrote, "but I've been thinking about you. I still remember the way we used to sit by the river, talking about the future. I don't know what happened to us, but I hope you're okay. You were one of the best parts of my childhood." Emily held the letter in her hands for hours. It was as if a small crack of light had broken through the thick walls of her loneliness. Someone had remembered her. Someone, somewhere, still carried her in their heart. And that realization shook her more deeply than she expected. But here's the thing about loneliness: it convinces you that you don't deserve connection. Emily wanted to write back. She wanted to pick up the phone, to call, to rebuild what had been lost. But fear held her back. What if Sarah had only written out of guilt? What if she didn't really mean it? What if reaching out only led to disappointment? So Emily placed the letter in a drawer and tried to move on. But she couldn't. Days turned into weeks, and the letter sat there like a quiet voice whispering, "You are not as forgotten as you think." Then, one night in December, Emily sat by her window, staring at the glow of Christmas lights strung across the street. She could hear laughter from her neighbors, families gathering, friends sharing warmth. She had never been invited into. For the first time, she admitted something to herself. She was tired of pretending she was okay, tired of carrying loneliness like a weight she could never set down, tired of being silent. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She realized she had a choice. She could continue to let loneliness define her, to let it silence her, to let it convince her that she had no place in this world. Or she could risk reaching out, even if it meant rejection. Because rejection, she realized, was not as heavy as loneliness. With trembling hands, Emily pulled out the letter from the drawer. She read it again, and this time she let herself believe it. Then she sat at her kitchen table and wrote a reply. It wasn't long, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. She told Sarah that she had missed her too, that she often thought about their childhood nights by the river, that she wished she had been braver about keeping in touch. And finally, she wrote, "I'm still here. If you want to talk, I'd like that." She mailed the letter the next morning, not knowing if Sarah would ever respond. And for the first time in years, Emily felt a strange sense of relief. Because no matter what happened, she had chosen courage over silence. A week later, the phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was warm, trembling with the same mix of fear and hope that Emily felt. They talked for hours that night, catching up on lost years, laughing through tears, and remembering who they had been before life pulled them apart. That call became the first of many. Sarah visited. Emily visited her. And slowly, piece by piece, Emily began to rebuild her life not just with Sarah, but with others too. Because once you choose to open the door, connection has a way of finding its way in. And here's the truth. Emily had never really been alone. She only believed she was. Sometimes, the world doesn't forget us, we just stop reminding it that we're still here. So if you've ever felt like Emily, if you've ever sat in the quiet believing that no one remembers you, let this story remind you of something important. You are never truly invisible. Sometimes, it takes a single letter, a single call, a single moment of courage to remind the world and yourself that you still matter. The turning point in Emily's life wasn't the letter itself. It was the decision she made to respond, to risk, to reach out. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Loneliness tells us to wait for someone else to come find us. But healing begins when we take the first step toward connection. So tonight, before you put your phone away, think of one person you've lost touch with. One person who once mattered. But somewhere along the way, life got in the way. Don't wait for them to reach out. Don't let fear tell you it's too late. Send the message, write the letter, make the call. Because sometimes the difference between feeling forgotten and feeling loved is just one act of courage. And when you make that choice, you'll realize something powerful. You were never truly alone. You were just waiting for the moment you decided to remind the world that you were still here.